How you doing this morning, JR?
I'm good. Good. Thanks for having me on, RJ. Good to talk to you again.
Yes, sir. Well, I want to talk some ball with you to begin with, right? Because we share this in common. I'm a tremendous OU fan. You are the OU fan. And I wanted to ask just from the start, like last year, nobody got to go to games. Not really.
Yeah.
How long had it been since you didn't get to go to an Oklahoma game?
Probably 30 years. Long time. Since before you were born, I assume.
Not quite. Not quite.
Close.
Okay.
Close. My first OU Texas game was in 1971 or 2. And every year I try to make it back, and then through my various stops along the way, career-wise, I always made it to Norman to the level that my late wife and I bought a home there just to go to football games and have holidays with my family and so forth. And so I still have that home in Norman. I also am partner in a 16-person suite, and I got 6 tickets on the 50 on the other side of the field. So I'm ticket poor, and I'm enjoying every damn minute of it. And I didn't go to a game last year, which is sad. And I can understand how fans live out of state and around the area. They can't get there. I missed it a lot. So I know we have 3 home games in September, and I plan on making them all based on my AEW schedule.
Well, there's one in particular on that non-conference schedule that I want to talk about, and I'm sure you want to talk about. It's OU-Nebraska.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to have appreciated that rivalry, but it's one that hadn't been played in the better part of 10 years. Do you have fond memories of it?
Oh, yeah. Because the reason I have fond memories of that event is because back in the day, as many of us old timers like to say, back in the day, my day, it was Thanksgiving weekend. And so it reminds me of my mother's kitchen smelling really good, and the turkey and the dressing, corn, and we had cornbread dressing. To me, that's the only kind. And so it was a family thing, but everything was over before the game came on, because when the game came on, it was game time, and that's what our focus was on. In those days, again, the Sooners weren't on TV every week, kind of like they are now. They got probably 2 TV games a year, Texas and Nebraska. And so when we got a chance to see the team on television, it was a big deal. So it's always been great memories, but it's tied to my family. It's tied to the aromas that came out of my mom's kitchen. There's a lot of emotional contact in that regard. So I'm excited about that, to see the Cornhuskers come to Norman and resume. But I hope, I don't know why the hell they left the Big 12. I know why they left the Big 12, because of Texas and the Longhorn Network, all that stuff. It's all politics and money. Real simple, really, really simple. So I'm hoping that somewhere along the way that smarter heads will prevail, and some of this realignment business will be addressed by those involved.
Well, hell, I mean, you mention it, like, we know why they left, but it ain't gone too well for them. You know what I mean? That's the part of this that I find to be the most interesting. And Nebraska thought they were getting the better end of the deal on this thing, and it hadn't turned out to be that way, even in what we think of as a weaker division in the Big Ten West compared to the Big Ten East. But this game, I wanted it to be 2 top 25 teams, if not 2 top 10 teams playing against each other. And it doesn't look like Nebraska's going to be in a position to hold up their end. But if Oklahoma doesn't win this game by about 3-4 touchdowns, you going to are you going to get the willies? Because I think of this team as being able to win a national championship.
They seem like they have all the elements in place. I was just in Oklahoma last weekend. I think it was last weekend, or weekend before, whatever, recently, to attend my oldest granddaughter's high school graduation at Lincoln Christian Academy.
Hey, Bulldog, stand up. That's in my neck of the woods.
That's where I was. And on a Sunday night, seeing her graduate was a cool thing. But it's just funny because people know I'm a big OU fan. And as far as a lot of my buddies are concerned, and the more they drink, the more convinced they are that Oklahoma's got this thing won. They got this thing won. And I don't particularly buy into that. They're always a target. They're the heel of like a pro wrestling villain when they go on the road. They're beloved when they're at home to some fanatical degree, which I love that too. So, but for years and years, RJ, I didn't miss many away games. Sometimes I rode in a team plane. Sometimes I had buddies that had planes. Sometimes we took road trips. But man, I was all in for a long time, and can't be that all in now. But I'm certainly going to support them every turn in the road.
You are a true OU fan because you don't like the hype. Like, that's the other part about this that I find to be the most interesting is there are a bunch of folks that the ones that think they got it won aren't the folks that have been around for when OU starts out ranked number 3 in the country, number 5 in the country, number 1 in the country, whatever it might be, because it always feels like we're going to come around and see Texas Christian on a day where they got it together, or where Katy Perry decides to call up Trevor Knight and tell him to call her, right? It feels that way. Yeah. So when you look at the schedule, what do you think? Who are you most afraid of?
Well, Texas.
Okay.
They're due. Somebody else is actually due to win the Big 12.
Yeah.
I think we've won 6 in a row, 6 championships in a row. But there's good coaches in the Big 12. How Sarkisian is going to do at Texas remains to be seen. They have high hopes he's going to do well. If they just get their share of the top players in Texas, they should be able to compete with anybody, anywhere, at any time. Mm-hmm. So that rivalry always scares me because those really deep passion rivalry games cannot really be predicted. It's a game that I would never bet on. I know everybody tries to figure out the little formula. Well, is it 3.5? Is the half going to kill me and all that stuff? And a game like OU Texas, I wouldn't gamble on it whatsoever. I think Oklahoma State's going to be decent. And I think we play Oklahoma State. Where do we play Oklahoma State? In Stillwater?
I think that's right this year.
Yeah, so that's never, an easy ride up 35. But you got Gary Patterson, like you mentioned, is a great coach at TCU. They get to recruit those good Texas kids. Hell, they can recruit a great team on a tank of gas in the Metroplex. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of who else.
Well, Kansas State has had their number, the last 2 years.
Well, that's true. And they got a good coach.
Yeah.
The coaching upgrade in the Big 12 has been significant. So I think I sat on the edge of my seat. About the only game that I would say, Big 12 game, that I would say we should be able to handle pretty easily is Kansas. After that, we're the target. Mm-hmm. And so you have a bad day, you have turnovers, you have penalties that are unnecessary, non-contact penalties, silly things. You just have a bad day, and God forbid something happens to Spencer Rattler. That's what scares me, because so much of our team is built around him. He's already projected to be one of the top, 2 or 3 draft picks in the draft and all those things. It's inevitable. This is his last year at Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Now, the good news is that we went out and got another quarterback, and he's a bad man. So I think you just never know. That's what makes the game so much fun. And I like for Oklahoma to be the bad guys on the road. It's fun as hell. If you watch it on television, you're cheering your team, and you're here to get booed at every step of the way. And I think for our guys and how they're coached, it enhances their swag. They believe they're the baddest dudes in the land, and they believe they can always make plays. They believe they can always score. And with Lincoln Riley calling the plays, RJ, I'm not going to debate that point.
Well, and you bring up a good point in that they're ultra talented, right? And you wonder if penalties and whatnot will get in the way of whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. And we know that this year that is ultimately win a national championship, but along the way, you got to make plays. You got to stay healthy. And that's the part about this that I won't gamble on is everybody loses players. Everybody has attrition for one reason or another, whether it's preseason ACL tear, right, or you lose your quarterback for a couple of series here and there goes your game. But to your point about Rattler, goodness me, I came up with Bob, right? And I want to talk about him a little bit, but I never really had a quarterback until Baker came through. Yeah. And this kid, maybe it's because it's recency bias here, but he has that kind of moxie about him. He has that kind of heel nature about him. He likes playing in front of people that are booing him. He likes being told that they're not going to be any good or that his players aren't as good as your players. Who are some of the guys that you would compare him to?
Oh my. Well, I've been around a lot longer than you, so
Yes,
I've seen a few quarterbacks. Jack Milton was one of my dearest friends, and I thought he was absolutely probably the toughest quarterback I've ever seen at OU, physically, because he was the object of that. He's playing the wishbone. He's going to be hit almost every play, and he endured, and he succeeded. Baker had a swag about him, sometimes a little bit too much, I think, but it always seemed to motivate his team. Quarterbacks have to understand what it takes to motivate their team, and sometimes it's making an ass of yourself, or it's being a little bit cocky. And that's what you got to do. Whether it might not be palatable for all. It's not your daddy's football game anymore. This is all about mental, and they're posturing, and they're looking for the next deal. They're looking for the NFL. They're looking for endorsements. They're at OU to get a degree, but a lot of those kids are at OU to realistically get a job in the National Football League. And there's nothing wrong with that. You wish you had a kid that had that kind of ability that could have that kind of a starting job. His entry-level job, if you're a top draft pick, is pretty damn good. So, but Mildred was tough. Baker was charisma personified. I never got that close to Kyler because, Kyler was very withdrawn at times individual. So he didn't get out there much. When Baker was redshirting, and I was on the sideline for the OU games, so I've been on the sideline for hundreds of them, I'm blessed to say. I used to hang with Baker on the sideline. And I could tell at that point, he had such a great feel for the game. He would tell me, JR, this play's going to work. Or JR, this is it. This is money. Watch this. Watch number so-and-so. Because he was hearing the plays being called. And, man, it was a fun way to watch a football game. So then I would focus on that receiver, and all of a sudden, boom, and they would do well. I never got behind as much as I should have. I loved his stats. Landry Jones just didn't have the charisma to draw us in. Mm-hmm. He was very yeoman-like, did his work, but my God, he had a great arm. He could throw the ball. So all those cats were that I've seen over the years. There've been some great quarterbacks. I thought Jason White was a hell of a quarterback until his knees all got wrecked, and he could throw the ball as 1,000,000 miles an hour and 1,000,000 miles away, and he was a good athlete. Jason was a good defensive player in high school. But Baker to me was my favorite quarterback that we've had there. And that's because I got to know him and we got to hang together, and I saw what kind of kid he was. And he was a wrestling fan. He'd kid me about Stone Cold and all these things, or saddle up next to me and start whispering, Stone Cold. But he's just he's one of the guys. And I think the team played through him in that image. So, but this kid, Rattler, here's the other thing about this. It's so looking at it socially, when you have a blonde-haired African-American quarterback, that's an interesting dichotomy to sort through, but it doesn't bother me a damn bit. I could care less as long as we're winning. I don't care what skin color. I'm not a skin color guy, period. Anyway, I'm a Cherokee. So I'm a half-assed minority myself, quite frankly. I wasn't subject to all the prejudices that my great-grandfather was. He was a redheaded, white-haired snow guy, but he married a full-blood Cherokee. And back in Adair County, Oklahoma, in that, in the early 1900s, that didn't go down well. And I've heard all those stories, man. So I can't even embrace my brain to even talk about how stupid it was. But there are fans on the road that would take shots at Spencer because of his DNA. And I say, bring it on, because all it's going to do is motivate him. And he's a stud, man. And I just hope he stays healthy. I'm knocking on wood right now, but he could be our next #1 draft pick. There's no doubt. He has a good year. He's got to stay healthy, RJ, as you know. And that's what scares the hell out of me, is that he's such a focal point of our team that every defensive coordinator and every head coach in the land are going to single him out as the guy we have to control. And we got to stop him. And we got to punish him. It's the same old theory that people used to say about Tom Brady. You got to get him off his spot. He's not real athletic. You can't run away from him. You can't make people miss very often. So you gotta get him off his spot. And which means beat the hell out of him. Get around his feet and ankles, get him uncomfortable, all those things that we hear the TV broadcasters say. But that's what you got to do with OU. You got to make Spencer Rattler uncomfortable and force him into these errors that he heretofore would not normally make. So I think it's going to be a great year. The receiving corps strong. Lincoln's done a great job with his staff in recruiting these guys. My favorite coach there at OU is Bill Bedenbaugh, and not just because he's my neighbor in Norman when I'm there, but he and I get along great. We get together and watch MMA fights, UFC, and things like that on a pretty regular basis. When they have a fight and I'm in town, I go to his house. And his wife, Meredith's a good cook, and so I eat, drink, and watch fights, and then I drive my little vehicle right back down the street to my house. So Bedenbaugh's a unsung jewel there. I tell you, RJ, you can't have all these great quarterbacks wanting to come to Norman without them recognizing that we have the best offensive line coach in college football, and he recruits some major monsters, major-sized, attitudinal monsters. And as long as he keeps doing that, I'm lucky that we have him. I know we're going to lose the defensive coordinator sooner than later. That's inevitable, right? I mean, he's going to be gone. He's going to be a head coach someplace. But Bedenbaugh he's an unsung jewel there, and I think people should pay a little bit more attention. Look at the guys he's put in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Tons of them.
Well, look, I look at Bedenbaugh and I see it, but I don't know that there's really opportunities out there for folks to get to know him in the way that perhaps you might get to know Lincoln, because you see him every time there's a presser, right? And you mentioned Coach Grinch, Alex Grinch is going to be a head coach because he's got that sort of mentality as well.
Yep.
But what Bill did to overhaul the offensive line almost as soon as Lincoln got, just a little bit before Lincoln got there, as I remember, to make it more physical, to beef them up, to employ a scheme that took advantage of their physicality, but also married the passing concept with the run attack. I don't know that we'd seen anything like that. I mean, we're talking about an OU team that routinely goes for 300 on the ground, 300 through the air. And that's your offensive line doing all that work up front. So I think I said real in air quotes here, Oklahoma fans understand that's perhaps the most important assistant on Lincoln Riley's staff. And
I think so. You can't continue to recruit those number one players or players of a high standing and without meaning skill position guys. Mm-hmm. Receivers want to play on a team where the quarterback has an opportunity to get them the ball.
Right.
They came to catch the football and then run with it. You've got running backs, same basic premise. I need holes to run. Sometimes I only need to crack, but I need room. And if you give me room, I'll make plays for you. All that starts with the offensive line. And of course, the most important element is giving your quarterback time to throw the ball, make a good decision, and keep him healthy. Mm. So Bedenbaugh's a real player in my eyes. And again, I'm biased. I'll be fully transparent here. He's a friend, but he does such a hell of a job. What you mentioned was very astute in the fact that he's created an attitude with that room. And I've had cookouts with them and things that were all legal. I didn't give them any money underneath their steak or anything, but they're monstrous people. Mm-hmm. But the thing you still remember is they're still kids.
Yeah.
And they have to be motivated. They have to be loved. They have to trust. They have to understand why all this hard work is ongoing, because it's a difference maker in how well we do. If we have a national championship run, a lot of that was going to be, in my view, is going to be credited back to the O-line. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Grinch has done a great job on the defense. The defense, at one time, I couldn't believe how bad we were. I mean, we were having trouble tackling, for God's sakes.
Hey, look, I was losing my mind in 2017, 2018. I was flipping tables because I'm watching three-man fronts against Georgia as Nick Chubb and Sonny Michel have their way with the defensive line, defensive front. And then I love Grinch for this. He comes in and it's, he knows what it is in 2018. He says, 129 out of 130 pass defense. And he was joking, but he was kind of serious in that I want that tattooed on their foreheads. You were 129th out of 130 teams. You were damn near dead last in defending the pass. We can't play football like that. And he comes in with this attitude of football is hard, right? Like it ain't supposed to be easy. And if you're doing it correctly, it's going to be hard. And the idea that you would have that sort of guy coming in to break down an Oklahoma defense, I think 20 years ago is unfathomable because of how good they were. I mean, particularly 02, 03, 04, that 4-3 under they were running. But he installs what I think of as a hybrid 3-4, 3-3-5 and gets these skinny, fast dudes on the defensive line and tells his linebackers to go eat people's lunch. And it works. I marvel at being able to motivate a kid that is that talented, because most of the time they know they're this good, right? And you have to find new ways to challenge them, but not to take away their will, right? Not to break them down so much that they don't want to work.
Well, you got to when you recruit a bunch of wild horses, you got to let them run. Mm. And even though you got to put a bit in their mouth to control things as they don't get out of control, you still got to let them run. You still got to they got to have their independence. And they can't have their confidence affected. And I think that's what Coach Grinch has done is he's given this team defensively confidence that we can be good. We can be really good, and we can win games for our team based on how we play. And, I like the fact, we got a defensive line coach from Oklahoma and Calvin Thibodeau. Calvin's from Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, well, he played at Oklahoma.
I'm trying to think of high school. He might have went to high school in Houston. Anyway, and then you got a kid from Ada that's a linebacker coach. Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he's a good one, boy.
He's on that when those teams were killing people. Like those Ada teams were killing people.
Yeah. They were at one time they were dominant, one of the dominant teams in the state. But I like, and his backside of his defense is strong, recruiting wise, passion wise. So what's happened here is much like Bob's early staff. When Bob hired Leach and Mangino and all these guys that went on to become head coaches, mm-hmm. I think Lincoln's in the same scenario. We're going to have a lot of our coaches at some point in time, or I'll say a lot, I don't know what that means, but several coaches are going to get offers to go do other things to make more money for their family and run their own program. And those programs
South Carolina.
Yeah, exactly. And he was perfect. Mm-hmm. And you knew he was going to be a head coach. Mm-hmm. Just hanging around him, coaching those H-backs or special teams, which his family's known for, coaching special teams. Coach Beamer, his dad was he was a genius at that. So you're going to see more of that, I think. And I think that's a testament to Lincoln. But the same thing is a testament to Bob. Bob built a foundation of coaching excellence there, led by him, that, is unprecedented in my view, to win so many games. And if you only base it on winning national titles, then you're missing the point as a fan. We all want to win national titles, but the only one that seems to have a lease on that title is Nick Saban.
Well, and that right there is the reason why it's real difficult to tell people that you can't have your national title. Me being one of those folks. Now, I was 13 the last time that Oklahoma won a national title.
Yeah.
And I'm getting up there, right? It's been some years since I turned 18. It's been some years since I bought my house. I want to see a national title living in the state of Oklahoma. Like I really want that for myself, but for kids that just don't know, because the other part about being an Oklahoma fan coming up the way I have is we don't know losing. We don't know winning national titles, but we don't know losing, right? We play for Big 12 championships. Yeah. We play in New Year's 6 bowl games. That's our birthright, or so we come to believe, right?
That's all that matters. What you believe. Mm. If you believe and you believe strongly enough in anything you do, it has a chance to come true. Mm. You can't. Your dreams are your dreams, and as long as they're realistic. And for us in Oklahoma, we're entitled. Mm-hmm. We're spoiled. Mm-hmm. And that started long before I was born, believe it or not, and certainly long before you were born, RJ, mm-hmm. With Wilkinson and all those cats. You don't win. What do you win? 56 games in a row at one point in time? And
47 straight.
47, yeah.
47 straight.
Who am I thinking? 56. That might have been Joe DiMaggio's hit streak.
Yeah, no, it was. But hey, and here's the other part about that. Like, people haven't gotten close. Like North Dakota State had theirs in, I want to say, at 39 here earlier this year. The Toledo team in like 69 won like 35 in a row. Miami, USC here of late, they did it. I mean, and that is what Bob is inheriting from Barry, and of course from Bud, and Bud from Benny. But I did want to ask you, have you given Fox Sports' newest personality any tips?
Say that one more time, please.
Fox Sports' newest personality.
Is that you?
No, sir.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay. Okay. All right.
You might be there someday, RJ. Just keep working, man. Bobby's going to do a great job. Jacob Ullman, the senior VP of Fox Sports, is a dear friend of mine, has been for a long, long time. And he used me on some Fox boxing at one point in time. And, he's always got me some FaceTime, whether it be at a game like the Cotton Bowl, the OU Texas game, things like that, being on a pregame show, things of that nature. We're just buddies, and we love each other. And when my wife got killed in 2017, he was Johnny on the spot. He was probably one of the first handful of people that even reached out. And he was so upset he had a hard time talking, as did I. Had a hard time listening. But we were talking about Bob, and I said, man, I think he's going to be great. He's a different personality than Urban Meyer. Urban was all business and very stoic and structured and, regimented. And Bob's going to have his game together, but he's not going to be overly structured. So in other words, here's how I envision it. Here's what I would say the difference. When those guys are off camera and they were done for the day, Bob will go have a beer with you. I don't see Urban going to having a beer with the boys. Mm. And we're seeing that here in Jacksonville now, where I'm recording this from. He's built a great deal of excitement and anticipation for the city. Of course, drafting Trevor Lawrence didn't hurt anything. Travis Etienne at the end of their first round draft was a surprise and a pleasant one for me, because I thought Travis Etienne was one of the best players in America last year for Clemson. He makes things happen. But Bob's going to add a little bit more humor. He's going to add some, I don't want to say, maybe it's casualness, but that indicates laziness or something. And he's not, obviously, you know that. But he knows the game. He has never left the football game. His father was a coach. When has Bob Stoops ever been detached from football? You said, well, he retired from coaching. Then he had the XFL run, reminiscent of your jersey there, with He Hate Me. I remember him well.
Yay.
And but Bob's going to do a good job. He's going to have fun. It's going to be a different feel on camera. Jacob was telling me that there's so many X number of coaches that can't remember how many coaches have won the national championship, and how they have hired many of them, like Urban, for example. And now they have Bob. Bob's the only coach that's won a national championship in recent memory that's not on television. So Bob's the guy. So I said, you made a great hire. And I know it's conflicting for Bob at times, because his son is playing on the team, got a scholarship awarded him not too long ago. I think he's one of those Julian Edelman type players, where he can find a spot and he can catch the ball. He has no fear, just like his dad. Crazy old Mike Stoops. He had no fear. But Bobby Bob. You can talk to guys from Iowa, and I've done that a lot, because when I travel or go to places, speak or whatever, a lot of guys in that region talk about Bob, and they said, man, he was the nastiest player on the team. He hurt you.
He broke Mark Harris's jaw. Like, I love that story, because, I think of Bob as, no disrespect, Bob ain't the biggest dude in the world. He knows that, but he's playing some strong safety, and the flanker, Mark Harris, Purdue, wearing his jersey number, comes screaming across the middle, and Bob put a helmet into the cheek back when you could still do that, broke the man's jaw, and then his teammates called him Jawbreaker. Now, it's one thing for you to go in there and lay the wood. It's another thing for your teammates to give you that kind of nickname. Nah, you don't want to see Bob in the hole. Boom Boom Mancini said you didn't want to see Bob in the hole. Like, that's all I needed to hear.
Yeah.
Right. So to say that man is tough is, I think, to put it a different sort of way. But I'm excited to hear what he has to say. I'm excited to see what he thinks of these leagues that he's going to be covering. I'm really excited to see what his TV persona looks like, because you mentioned casualness, but I've always thought of Bob as being self-assured, like he just understands who he is and what his role is, and lets everybody go to work.
He's not going to allow himself to look bad on national television.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the game in it, the player. He's still a player.
Mm-hmm.
These guys that are on that set are players. Not realistically, they're players because they played the game, and Fox has put together a hell of a team. Mm-hmm. But Bob's still competing. He's competing with those guys. He's going to be competing with all the other ex-coaches that are doing television now. He's going to want to succeed and be acknowledged as one of the better guys in that field. I kid him. I said, well, you got to stock up on your electric blue blazers, because everybody's got to wear electric blue now on television. And then you got to make sure you set on the end of your coat so that there's no roll up on your collar, so your shoulders here don't look like it's all you're slept in it. I'm kidding him, but I look at him as one of my best friends. As I mentioned earlier, in March of 2017, my wife got killed driving home from the gym on her Vespa, and a kid ran over her because he was on his phone. He killed her. It's minor. It's terrible. And so that was like on a Thursday, I believe. So Friday, Bob texts me, "Are you going to be home Sunday?" And man, I'm just trying to put all these pieces together. And I said, "Yeah, I'll be home." He said, "Well, Carol and I, his wife, would like to come by and see you." So I'm thinking, man, they're going to bring me a casserole. That's an old Oklahoma tradition, when somebody passes away and you come by to pay your condolences and your respects, you bring something to eat. Mm-hmm. Well, they didn't bring a casserole. They just brought themselves. And the March Madness was on television. So we settled in at my house, Bob, Carol, and myself, and watched basketball all afternoon. And he had a lot better things to do, I'm sure, than babysit old JR. But he loves me and I love him. He's a true friend. And so it was a matter of, he felt like that was his obligation to stand by a friend who has just had the worst thing in the world that could happen to him occur. But that's Bob Stoops that I know. And I know he's competitive. Hey, he's competitive on the damn golf course. He's a killer. He's a competitor. And I think that's what his teams learned from him, was to compete, be prepared to compete, and be prepared to win. And I think Bob would be prepared to win in his new gig for Fox.
Yara, you've been very gracious with your time, sir. I sincerely appreciate you stopping by to talk with us a little bit about OU, a little bit about your experience. Last question I have for you before I let you go. Did you have any choice in being an Oklahoma fan? Like, how did you get to be on board with Sooners? Because there's still people that root for that team in Stillwater.
Sure. And I'll be perfectly transparent. I root for that team in Stillwater too, except for one game a year. I'm an Okie. I'm an Oklahoman. My family came here in the 1880s. I still own a 160-acre farm in Adair County that was a part of my family's Bureau of Indian Affairs land grant. So I'm here. My roots are here. Even though I got a place here in Jacksonville on the beach, nicely to say, and our headquarters of AEW are here, and the Jags are here. I'll always be an Oklahoman. So I don't cheer. I have too many friends that have Oklahoma State ties. Mm-hmm. I don't cheer against them except one game a year. I want my Sooners to beat the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that I had any choice. I think one of the things that turned me on to broadcasting in general was OU football, because I became a big fan of sportscasting on radio. And, at night when I was a kid, I got a little transistor radio with a little earplug, for Christmas or birthday or something. And I would listen to Harry Carey and Jack Buck on radio station KMOX out of St. Louis, listen to the Cardinals. So I became a fan of the voices and the radio voices. We didn't have ESPN at that point in time. There was no Fox Sports at that time. So I'm a big proponent of the voices of radio, the voices of football. And so I fall in line. I followed, one of my favorite broadcasters was Ray Scott, Chris Schenkel, and of course the great Keith Jackson. Quick Keith Jackson story. I go to Stillwater to watch Bedlam, and he's calling. I think it might have been his last game in the Big 12. He might have done a bowl game later on, but won. But this is one of his very, very last performances and outings. And so one of the cameramen, his cameraman in his booth, came down to the field where I was hanging and said, "Hey, would you mind coming upstairs and meeting Keith Jackson?" And I'm saying, "Are you kidding me? Of course. He'd like to meet you. He calls you you're the slobber knocker guy." So we go upstairs to the booth, go through the security issues and all that stuff. Passed me right on through. He said, "There he is. I hope you like vodka." Also, of course, I like Barry Switzer when he's recruiting, and he found those past blue ribbon cans outside a guy's house, and he says, when the guy goes in, the father says, "Coach, can I give you a beer? Only if it's a past blue ribbon. That's my beer," or whatever the hell the beer was. And of course, Switzer gone through the trash. Saw what they drinking. That's recruiting, man. That's street smart recruiting. So I go up there and we have a little cocktail before the game, and he didn't, of course, miss a beat. He wasn't drunk. I said, "These are good for medicinal purposes, right, Mr. Jackson?" I'm Keith. He said, "I enjoy your work and you have passion, and it seems like you're having fun at what you do. And I just hope that you always have fun broadcasting." Man, you got to have fun broadcasting. Nobody wants to hear the version of that comedian Stephen Wright.
Mm-hmm.
He drones on, and I can't be Stephen Wright. I got to be JR. Just like you got to be RJ. But we got to be ourselves, man. That's the secret of being a great broadcaster, is being organic and being real. Because now the people don't think that they're being played. "Oh, he's just saying that because that's his job." No, I say things because that's how I feel. And luckily for me, how I felt has generally connected well with my audience. And they've been hanging around me for multiple generations now. I've met families where grandpa was a fan of mine, and the son and the grandson. 3 generations of fans that all grew up listening to my work. And I look at that as a great source of pride. So I'm blessed to be doing what I'm doing, and I enjoy talking to you. I did your radio show, didn't I?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You did.
Back in the day.
Yes, sir. And it was one of the highlights like this of my career, because as you mentioned, I'd come up listening to you. Like you're part of my childhood. You're part of my adulthood.
Good.
I love the Grill and JR podcast. Friends of mine, we all listen, and I love to support you in what you're doing. And it just means the world to me as an Okie and as an Oklahoma fan.
I appreciate it.
You're still doing what you're doing, and you care this much about it. And I'd be lying if I didn't say I learned a lot about how to do this job from you.
Well, thank you. Oh, well, take the good stuff if you can find it. Don't hammer on the bad English and bad enunciation. Sometimes, RJ, I invent words because I don't know what the hell to say. I'm so fired up. I make up words thinking that they're a real word. Then I find out afterwards, JR, that's not really a word. Well, it is now.
but no, okay. Like to that point though, like when we score a touchdown, we hear your voice, and we hear you calling the play, right? Even if we're laying over the top. And I know you've heard all of these things, and sometimes you probably get inundated with them, but that's how big a deal you are, not just to the sport of wrestling, but to us, to sports, just in general. I can't go anywhere without hearing your voice. I wonder if that ever gets to you.
It depends on the time and the place. I had a guy, I was boarding a flight before the COVID thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy and his son were standing behind me as we were preparing to board. And so this guy's really, really close to, he and I are together. I mean, he's really little, it's in my space.
Yeah.
So what he starts whispering, and he's giving me all the dialogue that I said when Mick Foley got thrown off the Hell in a Cell by The Undertaker in 1998. He's reciting this thing verbatim, and so and people are looking around and everything. And so finally I'm thinking, I know this guy means well, and it's great that he's a fan and he's remembered this this dialogue for all these years, for goodness sakes. And I turned around to, I don't want to say confront him, but to address it.
Right.
And his son was probably 12. He certainly wasn't born when this occurred in 98. Kid was a young kid. And he said, JR, I'm sorry, but he does this all the time at home. And my mother hates it. So we were sitting in doubt, DFW, getting ready to board, and there's this deal. Or the worst one is there's a whole empty row of urinals, and a fan comes in, and he's got to stand right beside me. And that's a little awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And they start reciting things. Hey, JR, is there going to be a slobber knocker? You know, is he goofier than a pet coon? Or is it whatever. And I'm thinking, you know, we could probably have this conversation. I said that. Why don't we have this conversation outside and not here at the old urinal? And there's all those urinals right down there that are empty. So I don't want to say it gets old.
Mm-hmm.
It gets awkward at times,
right,
depending on the place and the time. So, but I covet those opportunities. Of course, they want selfies now. Everybody wants a selfie. And when I first started, there wasn't nobody taking selfies, for God's sakes. So now everybody's got a camera and everybody wants a selfie. And no matter where you are or how quick you are or close you are missing your flight or whatever it may be, they want a picture. And I accommodate 99% of them. Unless they're closing the door and I'm going to miss my flight, you got your selfie. So, and here's how I love it. If you're going to take a selfie with me, please have your camera ready. Don't have to go on your phone and look up all your stuff and, everything. Much like I tried to get on this Zoom call today. Not too smart. So, but anyway, I've had the time of my life. And, I'm working. We do 4 shows a month and I work 4 days a month. I'm having a blast, man. He said, well, who wouldn't have a blast making a good living and working 4 days a month? Well, you still got to go out there and do it. And there's no net and there's, so I'm blessed, man. I'm probably one of the luckiest Oklahoma guys I've had a wonderful career. And I just hope that the good Lord gives me a little bit more time to have some more fun. It's a good life right now. The good Lord's blessed me in many ways.
Thank you, JR. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, buddy. Anytime.